Hello, everybody. That was a weird hello. I know that everybody probably doesn't care about me and all the details about my life and all that stuff, but I've been away for a while because I've been focusing primarily on my boxing. I've been boxing almost every day for the past 3 months. Recently, almost 3 hours a day. That's probably because most people don't choose to start their boxing career at the age of 38, like me. So I have my first fight on May 20th, and I want to be ready for it. So I've just been one track mind, focusing on getting ready for my fight. And I'm definitely going to be sure to share that here on this channel. So if all you want is Nio, I'm sorry. There's going to be videos of me getting my butt kicked most likely here in about 12 days. So stay tuned for that. Anyway, today we're going to talk about why Nio can't sell cars. And that's a real tough pill to swallow for some people, right? So I think a lot of people are worried about the performance of Nio recently. I saw in April they sold like 6,000 cars, which is really, really not a great look for them. It's up year over year, but not by much, and it's mainly because last year at this time was zero COVID nonsense. In my opinion, April will be the absolute worst month of the year for Nio. I predict them to increase month over month. There might be some up and down a little bit, but I think from here on out it's going to be better and better, and let me tell you why. I think the main reason I think most people are aware of why Nio didn't sell so many cars in April is because they only had two models to sell, only ET5 and ES7. Currently, Nio's preparing the rollout of the full new product suite of NT 2.0 platform vehicles over the next couple of months. The EC7 just launched. The ES6 is going to be launching here, I think, in a couple of weeks. It's going to be delivered very, very soon. The all-new refreshed 2023 ET7 is also going to start being delivered here soon. Then, of course, we've got the all-new ES8. We've got the upgraded EC6. We've got the ET5 shooting brake. We've got lots of cars coming online here in the next couple of months. It's essentially going to be a rapid fire deployment of all these new products on the new platform. As long as they can ramp up production, I think they're going to have, the demand is going to be there for these cars, particularly the ES6. I don't think that's the worry here. So now the real question, I suppose, is can Nio achieve their target of 250,000 cars delivered for 2023? I think there's a chance, but I do think it's going to be a stretch. What's the dog barking at? But we're going to talk about what is going on here in China right now. Of course, like I mentioned, there was the kind of the retooling of the factories and only selling two vehicles currently, which is a big contributor. But also, I think a big issue is the state of the economy here in China. I think a lot of people, they felt like after zero COVID policy, China was going to be roaring back to life. Economy was going to be just thriving. People were going to be making money hand over fist like they have been doing for the past 20 years. But, prices of housing has fallen quite dramatically. Anecdotally, I'm going to share you some anecdotes. Wages are not that great. Jobs are hard to come by, that sort of thing. And if you don't like anecdotes, I'm sorry, but you can go look at the official numbers that China puts out, about their GDP, that sort of thing, retail sales. You can look at all that stuff. But if you want to actually talk to like real people, I talk to my friends. It's not like I bring it up with them, but you go out and hang out with people and they're like, oh man, it's real tough right now. And so I'm going to share with you a couple of stories, some anecdotes. Again, anecdotes, they're hit and miss. They might not apply to everybody. But this is just kind of the general sentiment that I have gathered. So a year ago or so, in June last year, when zero COVID policy was still in effect, I was walking around the streets of Shenzhen. I showed you guys some shopping malls that were like essentially dead. I showed you some streets that were essentially dead. I showed you that, life was kind of tough right back then and the economy wasn't so great. I encourage you to go back and watch that video if you'd like, if you want to see how it was during zero COVID policy a year ago today. From what I've seen in Shanghai, in Shenzhen, and Guangzhou, a lot of it's kind of still the same. It's still like that. And here's the first anecdote for you too. So I have a friend who's 30-year-old marketing professional living in Tier 1 city in China, has Tier 1 city hukou, born in that city. Her parents are from that city, so they have property in that city. So they're, quite okay for themselves financially. She was making 25,000 RMB a month. Last year during the zero COVID policy, her company basically said to her, we're going to give you a pay cut, 20,000 RMB a month. You can take it or leave it. And so she was like, well, my contract says I should get paid this much, 25,000 a month. And you can't really legally break this contract. And she was thinking about what she should do. Should she try to take it to an employment lawyer? Should she try to fight with her employer? or just take the pay cut. I know a lot of people, they don't understand China. They think that like contracts are worthless in China. They're worth less than the paper they're printed on. And in some instances, definitely it's true. But I also know in some instances that people have fought with their employer for, severance pay or things that they were contractually obligated to get, and they have won. So I know that it is possible. But at that point in, last year, it was tough because of zero COVID, of course, especially. To get lawyers and deal with all that stuff. She was probably lucky just to continue to have a job, but also she was looking for a new job. And again, marketing professional, educated. She's taken a very strong career path. 25,000 RMB a month is a really good salary in China, especially in Tier 1 city. You can save money. You can rent a nice apartment. You can go out traveling. You can get good food, good coffee, good drinks, whatever you want. But so she was like, okay, I'll just try to find another job. And so jobs that had been offering, 25, 30,000 RMB per month 3 years ago, prior to the pandemic, they were offering her 15,000 RMB a month, 17,000 RMB a month. What are you going to do? You're going to stay at your 20,000 RMB a job, or you're going to try to find a new job and take a 15,000 RMB job. It's terrible. You have no option, really. And so here we're going to talk about some more anecdotes. When I first came to China 11 years ago, in the office I was working in, we were hiring people for like 4,000 RMB a month to be like paralegal or office assistant, secretary, that sort of thing. Also like college graduates, educated people. In about 2018, so 6-7 years later, in a different company, but still entry-level jobs, we were hiring fresh graduates out of college for about 8,000 RMB, 8,000 to 10,000, depending on their position. So salaries had essentially doubled in 6 or 7 years, entry-level salaries. Again, this is all personal experience, people I talk to, my professional experience, but for a long time, when I first came to China, money was just everywhere. It was just flying. It was so hard not to make money. I've talked about this before in my immigration videos where, it was so easy to just sell green cards to people. Again, you can go back and watch them if you'd like, but there was money everywhere. Everybody was feeling good. It was so easy to just like switch to a new job and get a pay increase. You buy a house and your house basically doubles in value every 3 years. It was crazy. People were just like feeling so good. But now here in 2023, after a couple years of COVID and zero COVID and where we are right now, the economy is more like very, very uncertain. And so when there's uncertainty, of course, people aren't going to be making certain purchases. And now, of course, Li, right? They still sold 25,000 cars last month. So people are still making purchases. But I think the real issue is if I'm a person, like my friend making 25,000 RMB a month, I could probably theoretically afford to buy an ET5 if I wanted one. She wasn't in the market for one, but if I wanted one, it'd be cutting it close probably. But then you start adding on battery as a service. That's an extra 1,000 RMB a month, which, it's great. It gets you into the car for cheaper. But now you have to pay 1,000 RMB a month for battery as a service. You have to pay your auto loan. You have to pay your insurance. And you might have lost your job, or you might have got your wages, cut for whatever reason. And so you're just uncertain. And so something like battery as a service, when money's, fast and loose and it's easy to earn and easy to get a raise, then you know what? Why not pay 1,000 RMB a month for battery as a service? But when times are tight, you don't want to have this extra cost every single month. And I think that's a big problem, especially with the ET5. With a car like an ES8, for example, if you're spending like 500,000 RMB on a car, obviously you're making more money, you're doing better for yourself. And spending 1,000 RMB a month for a battery is not a big deal. That's a very small percentage of the portion of the car payment. But when it's an ET5, which is basically the only model they're really selling for the last couple months, then it starts to become a little bit more difficult, in my opinion, to justify that. So that's a really big problem from my perspective. Let me know what you guys think, but I think that's one of the biggest problems. And then if you look at it, like I want a sedan, I can get a Model 3 for, with all these price cuts now, 230,000 RMB. I can get a BYD Seal now for 190,000 RMB. So not only will I save 30,000 with the Model 3 if I buy that, almost 70,000 with a Seal, I also don't have an extra 1,000 RMB payment. So that's, what is she barking at? So I think that's a pretty big deal. Next, I would say that people in China, very much like the rest of the world, they don't want sedans anymore. They want bigger cars. So if sedans aren't the main volume driver anymore, what else is NIO selling? The ES7? Yeah, it's okay, but people want the ES6, people want the ES8. It's kind of like an in-between product. So anyway, let's give you another anecdote. I have another friend, this one's in Shanghai, and her husband are actually still doing quite well financially. They recently moved to an apartment with charging, so they wanted an EV. They do travel. They're actually in Italy right now, as far as I know. but they don't do road trips, that sort of thing. So battery as a service, battery swapping is not a huge deal for them. But they did really like the ET5. They test drove it. They really liked it. They thought it was perfect for her, and she liked it. And so they were going to get it. The wait time for delivery was about 3 weeks, and they put down their deposit. During that time, Tesla had done another price cut for the Model Y. And they said, oh, well, screw it. Let's go check out the Tesla shop and see. You know, we've been in Teslas before. We like Teslas. They're fine. Anyway, essentially, they paid 240,000 RMB for a Model Y. They took it home that day. They didn't have to wait. They didn't have to wait 3 weeks. They took it home, and they drove it, and they could park it home, and they could charge it. She told me it's bigger, and it's cheaper, and it's Tesla, and I think Tesla's a good car. Tesla has a good reputation in China. Most people aren't, like, super online looking at EV stuff all the time and realizing that, you know, Tesla in some circles has like a bad reputation for quality or panel gaps or whatever, you know. Like, I think a lot of people online too much forget about this, but most people don't pay attention to this stuff. They don't care. So she told me if the prices were the same, it would have been fine. They would have stuck with the Nio. But to get a Model Y for, you know, about 30,000 RMB cheaper and having no payments for renting the battery, you know, having to wait, having to pay extra, pay monthly, I'll get a bigger car and I'm saving money. It's a no-brainer. I'm going to take the Tesla. So that's, you know, anecdote number 2, I guess, and strike 2 for Nio right there. So now let's get to another problem for the ET5 in particular. I would say that the market for premium sedans is not that big. Now at the top end, like boss type cars like Rolls-Royce and Audis and BMWs, you know, those cars, they're always going to have the market here in China. And then on the other extreme, you see budget EVs, you know, you see family sedans. You see those cars that are, you know, they're good enough, especially when you consider the price. You can get like I think a Shinlan SL03, what it is, for 150K. You can get a GAC Ion, which I test drove, for 170K. You see these cars all the time, and they're very, very affordable, and they're good enough. You know, maybe in 3 years they fall apart. I don't know. But for now, you know, you go to the lot and you look at them, you drive them, they're good. That GAC Ion, I drove it. It rattled a bit. It wasn't that great handling, but who cares? It's 170,000 RMB, right? So what you really don't see is in the ET5 range. You know, if you listen to NIO, what they say that the ET5 actually is leading, you know, leading in its market, in its class. It's the best seller, which is probably true, but there's really not other very many cars in that market. There's like the IM L7, maybe an Arc Fox, I don't know. There's not many cars in that market. And I think that's because, you know, once you start hitting that price around 300K, you get a Lishang L7 for 320K now. You can get an Ito from Huawei for like 250K. I think it's 260K, sorry. These are SUVs, and people want SUVs. They don't want sedans. If you're a boss, yeah, you get a nice big limo style sedan. You might spend 450,000 on it, 500,000 or $1 million on it, really. But for normal people, a lot of them, they're like, okay, I can spend 300,000 get an SUV, 250,000 get an SUV. Why would I buy a little tiny ET5 sedan for that price? People just want bigger cars, and that's just the way the market has been moving in America, probably in Europe as well, I'm not sure, but definitely in China. People want bigger cars. Look how well Lishang is doing. So after I've told you all this stuff, now I guess I should tell you is why we probably shouldn't worry so much as NIO stockholders, or I'm not personally that worried. You can worry if you want. While the economy has felt like really hot garbage for the last year, I feel like we're finally turning a corner. At least here in Shenzhen, in my neighborhood, where there's been lots of stuff that's been closed and not reopening. Now they're starting to see construction and renovation and places getting rented out all around here. It's like people are like finally starting to have a little bit of confidence, maybe take a chance, open a business. And so that's pretty good sight to see. Even just the other day, it was May Day holiday, and there were so many people. There were people from all over China here in Shenzhen traveling. It was just massive. It was like how it used to be like 4 or 5 years ago, where people were everywhere during the public holidays. Even during holidays earlier this year, like Tomb Sweeping Day, it wasn't that crazy. They call it People Mountain, People Sea in China, and that's what it was. It was just massive amounts of people out there having fun, spending money, enjoying their time, and it was a good sight to see. And a really interesting thing that I saw was a lot of people weren't wearing masks finally. Like, basically, you've been able to not wear masks in a lot of places in public, you know, last few months. Even trains, like subways, you can start to not wear a mask. On plane I flew to Shanghai, I didn't wear a mask. And a lot of people weren't wearing masks, but a lot of people still were. But on May Day holiday, there was a massive crowd, like crazy, and people weren't wearing masks, and they were acting like normal people again and just having fun. And it was like, okay, this stuff's really, really over finally. Like, it felt like the last gasp of COVID was just before that, and now we're back to normal in China. And it looked like people were having fun, spending money, going to bars, going to restaurants. everything was completely packed during the holidays. Like I said, people were coming from all over. I know that because you can hear accents, of course, if you speak a little Chinese. But also people were like staring at me, and in Shenzhen that doesn't happen except during public holidays, when people are coming from villages or other provinces. Even a couple of people come up to me and ask me, oh, where are you from, in Chinese. But this is something that hasn't happened to me in Shenzhen or Shanghai really in years. And since the pandemic started, people used to be like afraid of foreigners. They thought we had the virus. Now people are like back to how they used to be, and it's like really, really great to see. And I think it could have just been people who had saved a bunch of money, and they went out for the holiday, for the weekend, and spent their money, and now they're back to saving it and not making big purchases or traveling. But it just felt like China really finally turned a corner. That's one reason to look up. Another reason to look up is the ES6 is coming, and the ES6 has been by far NIO's biggest, volume driver sales previously. I think it looks like a great product. I think if you've checked it out already on other channels, you would see that it looks like a great product. It's going to do very well when it hits the market, in my opinion. I think that NIO understands and knows how important this car is, and once they announce the price, delivery date, they're going to have plenty ready to be delivered. I saw in Mr. P's video they already have cars ready up at in Beijing at the delivery center. So I think it's going to be a big deal. Anyway, it can't get worse, right? So I think another thing to think about is look at Li Automotive. Li has basically 3 cars right now, L7, L8, L9. And they're all more or less interchangeable. They don't look that different. They all basically do the same thing. And they pumped out 25,000 cars to be delivered last month. Even their prices are kind of similar, roughly similar to the NIO ES6 and ES7 and ES8. Not exactly, but close enough. So in my opinion, if Li can deliver 25,000 vehicles per month, then I think NIO also should be able to start delivering similar numbers with their similar 3 products, ES6, ES7, and ES8. They might cannibalize sales from each other a little bit. Maybe once the ES6 and ES8 come out, they steal 5,000, 10,000 sales from Li. They would have gone to Li, or the other way around, and they're each selling 20,000 a month instead of 25,000 a month. Who knows? But I think with those 3 models, especially with the ES6 driving volume, once NIO has worked out all the kinks of production, the production capacity increases, deliveries are going to be, I think, at least on just those 3 models, probably around what Li-Shang can do. I think that once you start throwing in the ET7, another 5,000 or 6,000 per month like they're doing of ET5, I think the ET5 shooting brake is going to be competing with, let's say, the Zeekr 001, which sells 2,000 a month. I think you're going to start to see NIO can start to get closer and closer to 25,000, 30,000 per month towards the end of the year with all of their models fully online. Of course, we also have the EC6 and the EC7. So does that mean they're going to get to 250,000 by the end of the year? Well, since the first half of the year hasn't really gone that well, it might be tough. But I don't think it's going to be as far away as people online are really thinking and worried about. I think that entire lineup of cars is really going to hit a lot of the market segments that the Chinese consumer wants, at least on the mid to higher end. I do think that one hard part that NIO has to deal with is they have to convince the public and the consumer that, the NIO community and NIO houses and worry-free, joyful lifestyle, all that stuff is like their unique selling point in addition to battery swapping. They have to convince people that it's worth it. And that is a hard thing to do if you haven't experienced, the joyful NIO lifestyle. Why would you trust that a company is going to give it to you? Why would you trust that their after-sale care is what you really want and deserve and should get from a company? That's NIO's job, and they got to convince you they're a premium product. Otherwise, people will buy a Li, or they will buy something else. And then lastly, I think it's important to remember that NIO is going to be launching at least one sub-brand probably by early next year. And it remains to be seen what the unique selling point of the sub-brand is. It's going to have battery swap. We don't know what the price is going to be. We don't know what the car is going to look like. I think it's safe to assume that they're not going to be, super exciting. They're going to be more of a budget brand, right? A more conservative brand. And I think it can go one of 2 ways here. On one hand, I've talked about how there's so many EV brands, especially on the lower end in China, that with the recent price wars, they're all kind of eating each other alive. Probably some of them are not going to make it over the next year, which, that's a good thing for NIO and their sub-brand. But on the other hand, it also It also gives more room for those brands to establish themselves that are, really going to start selling massive volumes of cars like the GAC Ions or the BYDs. It might be hard to break into those markets because there's some really established players just dominating. Might be easier to break in because there's fewer cars available because they've all kind of eaten themselves alive. So we'll see how that goes. I think that if NIO can deliver a good product with strong marketing, of course, and they can position their sub-brand as, a unique position in the market, I don't really see any reason why they can't start moving large numbers of units by the end of 2024, similar to numbers that, like I said, Ion is doing right now, 20, 30,000 a month of these budget cars. But I think the biggest thing that is really a challenge is the economy. I do hope it's turning around, like I said. It still doesn't feel like it used to. It was like, what was it, the Roaring 20s they talked about in high school, you learned about, when everybody's making money hand over fist and people are all getting drunk and hanging out with flappers and all that stuff. And then you get the crash. Of course, China hasn't crashed. People have been predicting the crash. But it isn't the Roaring 20s here anymore. It isn't the Roaring Teens like it was the last decade. I would like to see it come back because those were good times, man. Those were great times. And it would definitely help NIO be able to sell some cars. But anyway, I hope that wasn't too long or too boring. Let me know what you guys think. Please like, subscribe, comment below. Please give me your money. What else do YouTubers say? Patreon exclusive content I do not have, but if you'd like some, I will not give it to you because I got other things to do with my time. What else? This video is sponsored by Nebula. All right. Nebula has no videos of mine. I don't even know what it is. All right, bye-bye.